keep up to date with our latest videos, please hit the subscribe button below. Hi, welcome to this video from footballbetdata.com. Today we're going to be looking at the impact of first half goals versus second half goals with the approach to trading or backing laying the over 2.5 and under 2.5 goal market. So to get this data, I've logged into footballbetdata.com, navigated to the football data part and to fixtures and results. And for the example of the video we're going to show here, I've selected the English Premier League, which is E0, as you can see from the pop-up key, and the current season, which is 2021. And I'm going to export that directly to Excel. So here's the output in Excel. And what we have is the basic data from these matches. If you wanted to do more of a deep dive, you can look into the data archive, which has more of the odds range and odds markets. But we're pretty much only interested in the result and the halftime result. So this output will do as a summary. Also included within here are the goal times, which if you wanted to go to the next level and break it down even further, you can do. We do have an example download on the website, and there is a previous video which shows you how you can split the game down into certain sections. So in this video, we're splitting it directly in half down the middle, at half time being the separator, but you could split this into 10 or 15 or 30-minute buckets if you want to. So what we're going to be doing here is just showing you the additional formula that I've added in to split out and highlight differences between a team's performance in the first half and a team's performance in the second half. Okay, so we have all the data here, and then I've added in these additional helper columns from column V onwards, and I'm just going to walk you through what these mean. So we have the home team first half goals, away team first half goals, home team second half goals, away team second half goals, whether the game had more than 2.5 goals, how many games the home team has played prior to yesterday, and the amount of games the away team has played prior to yesterday as well. So the formula is pretty straightforward, but I'm going to take you through this anyway. So to get the home team first half goals, we've used the left function and looked at column G, which is the halftime result. So we're looking at cell G2, and we're taking the two characters to the left and converting that to a number by timesing it by 1. So two characters to the left is a 1 and a blank. There shouldn't be any team scoring double digits in the first half. Extremely unlikely, I would say, in a domestic league game. So you could adjust the characters down to 1 if you like. So that shows there as a result 1 goal. Same for the away team in the first half, and I have used 1 character here. So we're looking at G2 again, but instead of left, we're looking at right, and timesing it by 1 to get convert that to a number. Home team second half goals, very similar formula, but in this instance we're looking at column E, which is the full-time result, getting the left 2 characters, timesing it by 1 to convert to a number, and then simply minusing the total goals, taking away the home goals, home first half goals from the total goals scored by the home team. So that gives you the value for the amount of goals scored in the second half by the home team. And we've done the same for the away team using the right function. In terms of the over 2.5, we've summed up these 4 columns here. And then if it's greater than 2, we've applied a 1. If it's less than 2 or 2 itself, we've applied a 0. So that's the binary way of recording whether a game has had 2 or more goals in it, over 2.5 goals. For the home team games played, we're looking at countifs, and we're using column C as the reference for the home team. And then we're looking at cell C2, so Crystal Palace in column C, where column A which is the date column, has a record of today less than today minus 1. So basically yesterday, where the date is less than yesterday, we're recording and counting those games. And the same for away team, we're just referencing column D instead. And again, looking at today -1, you could take out that -1 if you just wanted to look for today, but I was playing around looking at yesterday's games after they had happened. Then further to the right, we've created these pivot tables on the back of this new data set that we've created. So we have the data range within the pivot table, and specifically on this pivot table is looking at the home team, and on the second pivot table we're looking at the away team performance. So just to take you through the example here, so let's look at Arsenal. So what we're showing here is the total goals scored by Arsenal as the home team in the first half, and then the total goals scored by Arsenal as the home team in the second half. So you can see, just looking at that, similar values, but slightly more goals scored by Arsenal in the second half compared to the first. The total goals scored by the away team at Arsenal's ground in the first half is 7, and the total goals scored by the away team in the second half, when Arsenal's playing at home, 14. So you can see a big difference there. Arsenal tend to concede, well, they concede double the amount of goals when playing at home in the second half to that of the first half. Then we can look at the amount of games that have finished with over 2.5 goals. So that's 10, and as we've covered already, there are 18 games pretty much across the board been played by the Premiership teams this season. And then further to the right, I've just added in these summaries, and these are coloured to identify quickly at a glance of the eye where there's any standout values really. So we're looking at the first half compared to the second half as percentages of goals. So in Arsenal home games, just 39.5% of the goals are scored in the first half, and 60.5% roughly are scored in the second half. And of all the games played by Arsenal at home, 55.56% of them finished with over 2.5 goals. Same calculations for the away team. So let's have a look at down the bottom for Wolves. So when Wolves have played away, they've scored 8 times in the first half as the away team. They've conceded 7 times. They've scored 2 goals. They've scored 7 times as the away team in the second half. So slightly more of their goals away from home have come in the first half compared to the second half. As the away team, they conceded 9 goals in the first half, and they've conceded 17 goals, so almost double in the second half when they're playing away from home. And they've had 7 games which have finished over 2.5 goals out of the 18 that they have played away from home this season. And again, we have these first half statistics and second half coloured, so dark being high and light being low, and the same for the over 2.5, separated by different colours. So what can we do with that data? Well, we can start looking for trends and patterns potentially where fixtures are upcoming. We are towards the end of the season. Well, we've got two games after tonight's, prior to tonight's games for all teams to play. As the way the league has formed this season, it actually comes down to the point where there isn't an awful lot for teams to play for. So there's the relegation battle's been decided, the championship has been decided, and all that's left to play for really is those European places and the battle for finishing higher in the prize money. So not an awful lot at stake. So teams can be excused from resting players, especially when we have 3 of our teams competing in the major European finals as well that are to come up over the next couple of days and weeks. So it's almost referred to as silly season, but the first couple of games of a new season and the last couple, some people and traders do tend to avoid those because they do throw up unusual results for more than one reason. As I said before, it could be with the Premiership in its state that it's in this year, teams are rotating, playing different set of players, or it could be that a team that is fighting for its life but down the bottom playing a team outside of the European places with no hope of getting in there. That result is favoured more to the towards the team towards the bottom than it would be at any other stage of the season, simply because they've got more at stake than the team that are potentially down tools and on their holidays. So getting back to the data here, we have added in an additional cell for each of these columns at the bottom, which is to show the average. So going back to Arsenal, where that they've scored 10 goals at home in the first half, the average for the league is just under 12 and just over 12 for the second half, which so Arsenal are just shy of the league average when looking at their home performance. And then we can look at the performance of the away team as well and compare that. So that's what this does in essence, in a quick visual, if you like. But what I'll do here for the purpose of this video is just take you through a couple of the games tonight and where I've identified things that stand out. So Burnley-Liverpool, if we look at Burnley-Liverpool, so Burnley's home record, not a lot of goals. So they generally, and as you can see by the over 2.5, not just their scoring, but conceding as well, very low. So the league average is just below 50% of games finishing under over 2.5. Whereas Burnley's only 1 in 3 finish over 2.5 when they play at home. You can see that their balance between goals scored and conceded in the first half is actually higher than in the second half. It's pretty much 50-50 when looking at home team performance here. So they slightly overperform in the first half compared to the second half, but not by anything significant. Looking at Liverpool on the road, so 50% of their away games have finished over 2.5. And you can see that in terms of goals scored, they're slightly above average in the first half, but hugely above average in the second half. So double the amount of goals scored in the second half than they have in the first half away from home. And you can see here as the away teams, there's actually a 10% swing between the two, but that's fairly significant. And even looking at the goals conceded, there's a big difference between the amount of goals in the first half of Liverpool's away games compared to the second half of Liverpool's away games. So, you know, there's nothing really of anything that stands out as significant in that game. But if I move to the next game down, which is the Crystal Palace-Arsenal game, you'll see that there is. So looking at Crystal Palace's home record here, you can see significantly more of their games have finished with more goals in the first half when they've played at home than the second half. They've also only had 38% of their total home games finished with over 2.5 goals. But the standout here is Arsenal. So looking at Arsenal's performance away from home, they've scored above average in terms of their goals in the first half and slightly below average in terms of goals in the second half. But if you look at the amount of goals conceded by them when they've played away from home, they've conceded the vast majority. So they've conceded the same amount as they've scored in the first half, but they've only conceded 2 goals away from home in the second half of their 18 games played, which is pretty remarkable. So you can see big dark colour here on the first half performance compared to the second half. Of their games, 50%, so around average, have finished under 2.5, over 2.5. So what can we do with that data? Well, like I said, looking at Crystal Palace, big difference between the amount of goals scored in the first half compared to the amount of goals scored in the second half, and a huge difference with Arsenal when they've played first half to second half. So one tactic might be here is to wait until half time and see what has developed in the first half, because we're expecting, based on the history, but as I said, we do have to consider neither of these teams have really got too much to play for, but you would expect, looking at the history from this season, there to be more goals in the first half than there is in the second half. So one tactic might be that at half time, let's say for instance the score's 1-1, we look to lay the over 2.5 or lay the over 3.5 if you want to give yourself a bit of insurance, with a view of trading that out or letting it run all the way through, because we're expecting potentially there to be more goals in the first half than there is in the second half. The other way to play it perhaps would be to place an over 2.5 goal bet before the kickoff and then look to trade that out during the first half or at half time if those goals materialise as expected. So say for instance there's a goal in the first 15 minutes, you'd be able to trade that out for a level profit. If there's a second goal further on in the first half and you get to half time with 2 goals in the game, you could exit that trade at half time profitably regardless of what happens in the second half. If on the flip side the the data doesn't hold up for this game and there are no goals in the first half, you have then the option to trade that out for a red because the game's not panned out as expected, or you still have the whole of the second half for those goals to go in and potentially trade out or let that run to the end. So how it's played is very much up to the individual. But with the data we have here, you can start to look for trends and things that you're expecting to happen. For me personally, I would probably be looking at this Crystal Palace Arsenal game and looking to enter at half time if there had been some goals in that game, where the market expectation may be, well, there's going to be more goals, but the statistics suggest that the opposite is likely, especially given Arsenal's defensive record on the road, which probably isn't too well known. And considering Palace have only scored 8 goals in the second half of games and Arsenal have only conceded 2, the data points to a low scoring second half. So we can go through and analyse all of these games in a similar fashion, but that is how you can start using our data from the website and start taking it to the next level with a view to how you can use it for trading or betting purposes.